People who have been fired for finally losing your temper on a customer. What's your story? Not me, but to quote a friend, Lady IT's $7.50 an hour not to beat your butt. You really think you're worth that right now? This quote deserves to be in a movie or something. That is badass lol. Not me, but a co-worker hated their job. He was a cashier, and one day got a really crappy customer. They just yelled at him for basically no reason, clearly angry at something else. So he just said frick, yelled I quit and walked down the check stands towards the parking lot yelling frick you to every cashier while flipping them off. Freaking legend right there. I was 17 and working at a movie theater when 2 weeks notice came out. It was opening night, and we were busy as heck, so I was already a bit stressed out. I was working concession, and we had just finished up the final night's rush when a group of 14-year-old girls came out and started asking for free stuff. When we told them no, they got super belligerent with us. We managed to get most of them to settle down once we threatened to call security, but one girl just wouldn't go away. She was talking crap to all of us, threatening to break stuff, and basically being an entitled T. We called security and they told her to get in the auditorium or get tossed out, and she went back in. Not 10 minutes after the security officer left, that crappy little girl came back out to frick with us again. I'd had enough, so I got in her face and told her if she didn't leave, I would end her. Turns out, my boss didn't take death threats lightly and I got fired. The girl was banned from the theater from then on, though, so I guess it evened out. Turns out, my boss didn't take death threats lightly and I got fired. Yeah, that'll do it. In 2007 I was 21-22ish working as an LVN full-time but worked at a grocery store in a produce department once a week for fun money. IDKY I still worked there. I think it was just sort of going through motions and refusing to quit, but I really was fed up with the job. Anyway, one morning a guy came into the store and decided to pick me to angrily yell at about some of the items being from Mexico. I told him he probably needed to take a nap and laughed. He rolled up one of his sleeves and said he needed to teach me a lesson and I responded go ahead, but I'm gonna hit you back and it is gonna freaking hurt. Got fired on the spot. One of my favorite life moments yo. That's crap. In my opinion, customer became aggressive and threatened violence. Fired for telling someone would use self-defense. Doesn't seem right to me. When I was in high school, I had a worksite job at the middle school's library. I suppose that counts as a job. Anyway, I hate middle schoolers. The only reason I took the job was to make a little extra cash. Being a 17-year-old high school girl, the boys would follow me around like lost puppies and make disgusting comments. I tried to tell my boss about it, but she just said boys will be boys. One day, they crossed the line. I was putting books away when I accidentally dropped one. I bent slightly to pick it up when one of the little twerps came up behind me and slapped my butt. That was the final straw. While him and his friends were laughing about it, I walked over to him and slapped him. I told him that if pulled something like that with another girl, he'd be getting the same treatment. My boss found out what I did and said my services were no longer needed. Just to get a little more revenge, I found out the kid's name and emailed his mother, letting him know exactly what he did. Anyway, I guess being harassed by a group of boys is no excuse to get mad, so I got fired from an otherwise great job. I don't really miss it. Whoa, more like boys will be future HR shitstorms. Not fired but got a warning. I work at a living history park. Pretty much it's an outdoor museum with rideable artifacts, train, carousel. I was on the carousel and that day was a field trip day. We stress that kids treat the carousel animals well and not be little shoots because the carousel is 100 years old. Anyways, that particular day an entire school of kids decided to be little shoots, screaming to drown out the operators' voices, mocking us, abusing the carousel animals, risking their lives. So I went into be operator mode. When people were in line I told them straight that if they don't follow the rules they are getting kicked off, and that X school has better watch it because they were one straw away from being banned. Parents complained about me. They said I was being mean and shouldn't have called them out on the mic. I stepped on someone's kid once because they were letting it crawl around on the ground. I felt terrible, but also, watch your freaking kid. I was waiting tables for this psycho and his psycho wife at a restaurant that was trying to rip off Spaggers. In fact, just before I started working there, they had been legally forced to change the name from Spaggers to something else. Anyways, I'd been there about 2, maybe 3 weeks and still hadn't been trained like they said I would be. Was supposed to do a shift in the kitchen so I could learn all the food and blah blah blah, but they just never got around to scheduling it. Cause it well dumb and extra effort on their part. You know the type. Anyways, I come in for my shift, get my first table, and I'm in the back making salads. Classy. When the psycho wife tells me to stop what I'm doing immediately and come with her, she leads me into her office closet and starts berating me for my low sales numbers and asking me why that is. I respond with I don't have very good menu knowledge yet. And why is that, says psycho wife. Well, I still haven't had those kitchen shifts yet. She frowns and gets a disappointed look on her face, like you do when your adult dog shoots on your carpet, and she says, "Old Jill Poindexter, I don't want to hear excuses. This is 2014. You have Google. You can look up how things are cooked for yourself." At this point, my table had been sitting with no water or salads for maybe 10 minutes. I don't remember exactly what she was saying, because I realized that I tuned her out at some point, but in mid-sentence, I stood up, reached out my right hand to shake hers and interrupted her. "You know what, Mom? I don't think this is going to work out for either of us. Nice meeting you." She looked at me like I'd slapped her, but she shook my hand before I left. Felt amazing. 10/10. This gave me what can only be described as a justice boner, and I have lady parts. Customer service, working for a bank. A very rich customer rang in complaining that the interest rate on her account had gone down from something like 2.75% to 2.5%. She had over 200 grand in the account. She just kept screeching and screeching at me. I threw my headset at the screen and hung up on her. Manager witnessed the whole thing. She was surreptitiously listening into the call at the time, and the incident contributed to my being fired weeks later. I lasted 2 months at a call center for Bofa. Frick that crap. Not necessarily to a customer, but I did get fired over a lost temper. This was about 2 years ago while I was working at a produce clerk at Kroger at my first job ever. I was a closer with another guy, we'll call him David, and one of our jobs was to take the trash out before we left. One night we had this really heavy bag of trash to take out because it was the 4th of July weekend. We're loading up the trash cart, and while I'm talking with David, I get called by another employee to help with something. I ask if David can take the trash to the dumpster in the back and empty it. He agrees and we go our separate ways. A few days later, while I'm sorting out the organic fruits, I get called up by my manager. Now, my manager and I had been at odds since I had gotten hired. She always felt that I was working too slowly and not being friendly enough, although other customers said that they liked me and would always compliment me. She even aired me out in front of the other customers about it instead of telling me about it privately. Naturally, we were at odds. This time though, she called me for something different. Apparently, David had spilled the trash over the concrete by the dumpster and then just left it there overnight. Her point of contention was that I should have been with him while he was emptying the trash. Admittedly, she was probably right, but it was my first job and I really wasn't sure what to do. Still, she went in on me, demeaning me and just insulting my entire work ethic. So, I just threw my apron on the ground, cursed her out and left. Pretty much never went back after that, but I called the next day saying I got fired. My GMA threatened to bludgeon a customer to death with a can of beans. She was fired from King Soopers after 25 years of being with the company. Beans of all things. I didn't lose my temper, but I couldn't hold my tongue anymore. I'd worked in the high-end same salon for 7 years. I'd seen more than enough clients be and moan about their hair and crap, and I was already on the verge of not giving a crap anymore because I'd had enough of the spoiled rich clientele and the stupid high standard of customer service I had to provide to them. One day this man came in for a haircut with his son. I got called from my receptionist that the man wanted to see a supervisor. I walked over and asked him how I could help him. He said he was very unhappy with his son's haircut. I took a look at it and I admitted that it was not a good job. so I apologized to him and offered to have another stylist fix it. Well, for some reason, he didn't accept my offer and all he wanted to do was complain about it. I was just about to offer him a refund, but then he said this: "This is the third time in a row I've come here and each time you've messed up my son's hair." To which I replied, "Sir, if this is the third time in a row you've been unhappy with our service, then why do you keep coming here?" Him: "I will make sure your manager knows you said asked me such a question." Me: "If you feel that way, then go ahead." I don't remember what happened immediately after, but since that day, I began off spiral of I hate this place attitude and I was fired a couple weeks later. Frick that guy. Sounds like you had some serious burnout from the job. Hope you're doing better now. Didn't lose my temper exactly, but I was 17, working a customer service receptionist job. I was yelled at for 10 minutes straight, full on spitting in my face by a middle-aged lady. I was shaking while she yelled at me, and about 5 minutes after she left I broke down into tears. I was fired or not being professional. That's disgusting from her and the management. Got fired for calling out our weekend manager for regularly stealing wine from stock to sit in the bathroom and get pee instead of doing her job. Was told to come back with proof. Came back with a video of her doing exactly that and fired 2 days later. Apparently I'm not a team player. Weekend manager was definitely blowing someone higher up. I didn't get fired, but as a younger attorney I had a rather difficult divorce client who was stalling about providing discovery to the other party and was at a very real risk of some serious contempt charges. One of the partners walked by my office hearing me yelling into the phone, "Just freaking get IT done today." Had to get sat down and talked to by all the partners about how unprofessional that was and how they didn't want their firm represented that way. They were the ones who encouraged me to take that crappy case on in the first place, and when I later resigned from that job, because it sucked for a bunch of reasons, they dropped him as a client because he was too difficult. The client sent in the discovery 25 minutes later and by doing so avoided about $20,000 in fines. Because the judge was already fed up with him, I told the partners that that was the only way I could get this particular client to do anything, but they didn't believe me until I left that firm and someone else tried to deal with him. Former legal secretary, OMFG senior partners and pushing bulls on everyone. It wasn't a customer, it was the owner's son. I was sitting in the staff room eating my lunch. I'd had spinal surgery a few months earlier, but was pretty anxious about being touched because I'd spent so long having to be genuinely afraid of being knocked over. As I was sitting there, her son, about 6-8 years old, came up behind me and whacked me over the back with a largish pipe. It was like stuffed vinyl, something like that. I freaked out and spun around and snarled at him just as my boss walked in. Never got another shift. I should have controlled my temper. I just flipped out. It hurt terribly. Not an American, but I would have sued. The customer was spitting me into my face. At that point, I lost my temper and gave him a slap. My boss didn't like my behavior, so he fired me. According to him, as a service person you always have to stay friendly. Should have spat in his face as one last frick you. Bartending. Some very rude customers at one end of the bar were trying to get our attention, so they started whistling at the guy I was working with. He turned around, said I am not a fricking dog, and carried on working. The customers complained and he was suspended. He ended up just leaving and moving to Spain. Dang. In the bars I tend to go to, the bartenders have full diplomatic immunity, and if you frick with them you'll be facing a crowd of angry regulars. Not fired, but this led to me quitting. I worked in a pub and most of the customers were really up their own asses, "Oh, I am so much better than you" attitudes. Anyway, I was alone in the kitchen. It was getting busy. I was getting stressed too, as not only were breakfast orders coming in, but lunch main menu items as well. I was getting angry, running around like a headless chicken, and I started swearing. First under my breath, then talking, and finally yelling. Then a customer told me to stop swearing. I swore, not paying attention because orders, and I got in trouble because of it. I had someone else working in the kitchen, but he was busy in the office. If restaurant patrons knew 10% of what it was like to work in the kitchen, they would encourage chefs to swear more often, or keep their freaking mouths shut about how they do their job. Not me, but my old boss at Starbucks in New Mexico. He's a great guy. Played rugby so he's big and tough. Anyway, his girlfriend broke up with him and he was attached to her kids. We're at work and this bitchy self-righteous customer came in. You know the type, I'm too good for this town but I'll never leave so frick you. Her. Extra hot mocha. Boss, what temperature would you like? Gives ranges. Her. I don't know. Extra hot. Boss, mom, I need a number. I don't want to burn you. Her. I don't know. Just make it extra hot. He then grabs the cup, slams against the wall spraying mocha everywhere. Boss, get the frick out of here. She leaves and we close the store early. He is a legend. I wouldn't have known a range either. I guess I would have just picked the highest. Obligatory not me but my friend. He was working at a shop right at the time. He was a cart boy to be exact. He's a pretty mellow guy and it takes a lot for him to get mad. But one day, a lady parked in the fire lane. He went up to her car and calmly told her that that was the fire lane and she couldn't park there. She ignored him. He told her again that she couldn't park there and she said, "Are you security?" My friend says no. Lady goes, "Then shut the frick up." That's when he loses it. I don't remember what he said, but I know that they got into a shouting battle. His manager told him that he should have gotten someone to take care of it, and he should have carried on with his job. I agree with this. I know that you should never raise your voice at a customer, no matter how ignorant they are. He was fired at the end of his shift. TBF, if someone ignored me then told me to shut the frick up, I'd lose it too. Not me, but I'm a witness. I go to a small college in a big city. At the time I was dating an athlete on a team with several international players. A bunch of us went to a club for a friend's birthday and the club was absolutely packed. You could see from the outside that it was overcrowded and the bouncer wasn't letting anyone in except for a few girls, so I got in, but there was about to be a riot outside because of a bunch of foreign drunk college students wanting in. The bouncer climbed up on a table and shouted, "I don't give a dang if you're a motherfucking Australian, you're not getting in." The owner reportedly heard this and fired him after his shift that night. Honestly, I would give him a bonus. He's committed. Bartender here. I worked at the same place for about a year and there was this one woman who got on my last freaking nerve. Not even counting personal reasons. She just always tried to pawn her drinks off onto other people's tabs. Guys she'd flirt with. She got away with it most of the time because they were drunk, but there were a few times the guys would literally come up and tell us, "Do not put her drinks on my tab." We were incredibly happy to comply. One night, her crap wasn't working on anyone and her tab ended up being $99 even. She left as we were literally kicking people out. In Ms. there's a law that all alcohol has to be in the trash, bar wise, by 1:30 or there's a bunch of fines. And when she heard what her tab was, she argued with me, then threw a $100 in my face and went to walk out. I'd been dealing with her crap for years as a general human being with friends of the, somewhat, same social circle, along with dealing with her in the bar for a year. While she was sleeping with the owner and basically got away with anything because of it, and I'd had enough. I grabbed the money and as she walked out I very loudly said, "Thanks for the tip." She turned around and looked at me like I slapped her. Fast forward later into that week. I was working alone during the day and she and a friend came in to eat drink. I served the friend but refused to serve her. She told me I had to and I plainly told her to tell my owner to come pour her a drink if she wanted it that badly. Owner lived upstairs and when I went up to grab food for someone else rolled his eyes and told me to serve her. I politely told him that I wasn't serving her anymore based on everything in the past and that I'd rather go home than deal with her. About 20 minutes later he came downstairs and sent me home. I'd already put in my 2 weeks so I honestly didn't even care that much. Frick that entire situation. My company was fired as a contractor. We did IT for a particular franchised hotel chain. I was on site moving some network equipment that was in a closet attached to the main lobby area while they were doing some renovations. A guest walked up to me while I'm carrying a blade server, starts chewing my butt about being able to smell the pool. I told her nicely that I don't work for the hotel and that I'm sure someone at the front desk can help her. I start walking toward my cart to set down the server that was becoming pretty heavy at this point and she steps in front of me and basically calls me a liar, then going into a rant about nobody will take responsibility for anything anymore. etc. I step around her and set down the server and then tell her in a slightly less polite way that I don't work for the hotel and have no responsibility for the pool or its smell and that she might as well be at Home Depot complaining about Walmart. I walk back to the closet and grab the other blade server, and as I'm walking around her to set it on the cart, she steps in front of me again, causing me to lose my balance and drop the $15,000 server on the floor as I fell on my face trying to save it. Understandably, I lost my crap. I told her to get the frick out of my face and she'd be lucky if I didn't call the cops. The hotel ended up suing her for the damaged server and all my time to replace the parts and reconfigure it. But when contract renewal came back around, they chose not to renew because I had handled the situation unprofessionally. I didn't bother to defend myself. It was just an excuse to go with a cheaper contractor, and we ended up having to come in on a time and material basis to fix stuff the cheaper guys couldn't figure out. I wonder if Brad's wife lost her temper when she was working at Cracker Barrel. That would certainly explain her being fired after 11 years of faithful service. Had a guy come into the store about a week ago who kept calling me Jose. I let him know that wasn't my name, but his reasoning behind it was, if you were Mexican, he'd call you Jose. Whatever. I shrugged it off and continued helping him until he stated, it seems since you're a Jose, you lack the intelligence to even help me. At that point I told him to frick off and get out of my store. His response was, I'll make you pay for this. You'll regret saying that to me. My final response to that butthole was, if me and you were outside and I wasn't wearing this shirt, you wouldn't speak to me in that manner. So if you'd like, we can go outside, but I guarantee you I'm gonna pop you in your mouth. I've worked in retail for many years. Never have I been so angry. I regret even letting that butthole get to me the way he did. I'm not jumping down people's throats for saying something about race, but if he refuses to call me by my name because of race, he's not getting service. Apparently taking out your frustrations on a corpse instead of a punching bag is looked down upon in the mortician field. Who could have known? It's all fun and play until the corpse's ghost comes to haunt your dreams forever. I was at an oil field services company, and a client kept asking for free service. Basically stereotypical Indian American client. Demanded everything for no reason, and never wanted to give anything in return. I was constipated and pissy, and told the guy we're a business not a charity. Got back to my boss, and see you later. Hahaha, this just happened last week. A gentleman called the winery I worked at, demanding that some guest he had sent in be seated in a certain chair, given free crap, and a bunch of other less than reasonable demands. He never actually explained what I could do for him, but he did tell me the wine tour company he owns. Asked me if I knew who he was, because you're dang sure gonna meet me, and let me know, twice, that he thinks I'm a freaking idiot. I went on his website, and left a nasty review. I also left the same review as a Yelp review. I specified who he is, and spelled out the disgusting way he treats customer service people. I let him know that he should be ashamed of himself, and that I would never recommend his services to anyone, ever. This made me happy, because I knew lots of people would read it, including people at his company, and they did. He called our GM furious, and very embarrassed, as he should have been. I was let go last Tuesday, but I already had another job lined up. The winery I was at sucked, so I'm doing that now. Woohoo. The Yelp review is still up. Frick yeah, power to you dude. I guess I have one for this. I was 23ish and working as a bartender at a newly opened hotel. We opened without a bar MGR and the plan was to hire internally after 2 months. I put my name in for the position, but of course it went to the GM's BFF. This woman was a grade A moron. Early 50s, single mom of a 4-year-old, living with her mother. HS dropout, had been cleaning toilets until she got this job from her friend. The sort of moron that put 60 gallons of fresh odge in the dry storage in Texas for a month and then says to sell it anyways when confronted about it. I tossed it all in the dumpster when she left for the day, because that makes sense over the person with pertinent experience and studying engineering. Anyways, we had health and safety forms where we had to record temperature of all cold storage because we sold food too. This, of course, ended up being my job because the bar MGR was too much of a moron to remember, and 100% of the days I was gone, it wasn't done. I show up one day and all of a sudden my initials are forged on the places where there were blanks before. Obviously, I'm not cool with that, so I go to the GM who says I'll take care of it. The next day I show up and get fired because obviously things aren't working out. Just to clear some things up, especially for the person saying there could have been a better outcome, I have actually complained about that student several times before the incident. No one listened to me and I was told to ignore him. I tried ignoring him and obviously going to someone to complain wasn't working. If you were in the same position, tell me you wouldn't want to punch the kid. It's not like he didn't deserve it. And after I contacted his mother, she apologized for her son and said he got what he deserved. She had no idea her son acted like that, and apparently his behavior has improved since then. And not me but a friend, he had a kinda bitchy SJW type manager. Mind you, this guy was a red-blooded MAGA hat wearing Murican. So the manager is just railing on him for something, demanding he do the job required of her entire shift and is pee when he can't. So he just strips his shirt and headset off and left the place he was working at. Never returned. I guess that's what happens when Hulkamania runs wild on you. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.